Hi everyone, this is the fourth video in our series for the EMP Prepping meetup. If you haven't seen the first three videos, I strongly suggest you watch those first in order, as this basically builds on what those covered. So this particular video is a plan of action for the day of. In the first three videos, we covered on the first one what an EMP is and what effect it has on our society and why you should care. Number two was putting you in a scenario, an EMP scenario, and having you think about how you would handle it. And you need to get down to the details in that scenario and figure out all the various ways that you're going to be affected by not having any of the tools you usually have, and what you can do to prepare. And third video was planning for this day and everything that you can do right now to prepare for that EMP day and be in a better position to survive it. And then this one is the what to do on the day of, and it's relatively short, and then I'll cover the resources, as there's a lot in there. For this one, if you have implemented everything in your preparation plan, you should be in a better shape than 99% of the people in the country. If you have actually gone through those three videos and you've thought everything out, and you then went through your scenario and you figured out all the problems that are going to exist, lack of security, lack of transportation, lack of communications, and then you take that and you work out a plan with some of the information I gave you for solving those things, insecurity, and for solving the communications issues, and for solving your transportation issue. You implement all that, and actually by implementing, I mean you actually buy the vehicle, you have it ready, you prepared it, you have your license to carry, you carry every day, you make sure that your family knows how to use firearms, and you have firearms to protect the home. And then you also have communications in place, whether it be a satellite phone or whether you have a Faraday cage and have protected all your electronic equipment that way, perhaps some vacuum tubed ham radios. If you've done all that, then you are ready for this day, and when it happens, you'll be, like I said, 99% better off. So if you get here and you see, if you're outdoors or indoors, and you see an unexplainable, sudden, intense flash of light and you cannot identify the source, this could be a nuclear burst. Now, there is some question as to whether you'd see anything, because it's fired off so high up above us, 300 miles up, that chances are that you might not even see a flash at all. So, but if you do, you need to drop to the ground, you need to close your eyes, cover your ears, and open your mouth. You want to protect against flash blindness, and if you saw the flash, chances are you're going to get a blast wave. So you got to protect against the overpressure of that. You need to remember there will be a second blast wave in the opposite direction, so don't be in a hurry to get up. Of course, like I said, maybe you may be far enough from the actual waves that may never get to you, or it may be up 300 miles, and in which case none of these things would happen. But the only thing you might see is simply that the power goes out. Now, I'm going to skip here, this red part. I'm going to skip that instead and come down here, which is really, how do you determine that it's an EMP and not a regular outage? If you're at work or at home and suddenly the power goes out, how do you determine whether it's an outage, regular one, or an EMP? If the lights go out only, that's a power outage. That means you're good, everything's fine, the power will come back on. If the lights go out, power goes out, cell phones are dead, and by dead I mean you try to turn them on and they don't come on at all. It's a black screen. If cars are dead, if your landline, if you have one, also is dead, then all of that together will give you a sign, or it's a sign that an EMP has occurred. And also if you see a flash of light, but again, you might not see a flash of light. It might just be simply that the power goes out. But the key thing is, everybody just about nowadays has a cell phone. If the power goes out and your cell phone's dead, chances are, and if you look around and everybody else's stuff is dead, it's an EMP and it has happened. Now let's go back up one line. It is critical to head home at first detection and confirmation of an EMP. Right away, you need to leave. If your plan is to get back home, you need to leave immediately. Why? Because the more people realize what the situation truly is, the more difficult it will become to make it home. It's going to be difficult enough as it is right away anyway, because there's going to be cars strewn about everywhere on the freeway and the roads. People are going to be standing around. They're going to be freaking out. They don't understand it. Their phones won't work. They're going to know something's up, but they won't yet come to a full panic. And you need to take advantage of that first period right after it to get home. That's your best chance for making it home. Now, if your last bullet down here, you need to not share the fact that you have working transportation. Your one and only goal is to get to your family, to get home. If others realize that you have a car that works, you can guarantee that people will start to demand that you give them a ride. And while you might be thinking, well, it's kind of cruel not to do that, you need to realize that the person you agreed to give a ride to might be in the opposite direction of where you live. You've just committed to extending the length of time and distance in which you'll be in danger, and you're endangering the chances of you getting home in time. At this point in time, your number one priority is to survive and make it home. Your family needs you, and they're going to need you. You cannot be putting other people and other people's lives ahead of yours and your family. That is the sad truth of it. Now, you read and study this stuff. A lot of people will say, yeah, well, you can't survive without a community. Well, that might likely be true, but that community is back where you live. Again, direct line from work to home, school to home, as soon as possible. That's the plan. Don't deviate from that. Security. As I mentioned in the previous video, you need to have a license to carry. You need to keep your everyday carry concealed. Do not open carry, even on that day. In fact, particularly on that day, do not carry openly, because that's going to make you a target to a certain number of people who are looking for a firearm, and if they see a firearm on you, they might make some effort to get it from you. If you don't have one, you're just blending into the rest of the people. At that point, you need to implement your situational awareness. You got to keep your head on a swivel. You got to be constantly on alert and aware of everything that's going on around you until you make it home. And then you implement that whole process again at home. You got to implement the OODA loop. You got to be on your toes, ready for any threat, and have a plan to react to it. When somebody looks at you, you need to look back at them. Don't cower away. Don't look down, because you're sending a signal that you're afraid. And there's no need to do that. Keep in mind that 911 is no longer an option. You're on your own. Everyone else knows it too, or they will know very soon that the police aren't coming. And a small number of people will take advantage of that information. That is why it's so important for you to get on the road home ASAP. You don't want to let the people who normally would commit a crime, if they know the cops can't get there, they're 90% more likely to commit the crime. Those are the ones you need to worry about. And you cannot let that time period between the time the EMP happens and the time that they realize that there's no cops coming, you can't let that time slip away. You got to take advantage of that time to make it home. While they're still holding back because they don't know, they think it's a regular power outage and the cops still can be called, that's when you need to make it home. Be aware that as a moving vehicle, you will stand out and will become a target. If you stop and think about it, in all the cars that you see on the road, what percentage of those are pre-1990 or pre-1980? Those are the only cars that are going to be moving. And if you're in one of those and everybody else is stranded, you're going to become a target. So that's why it's ultra important to get home as soon as possible before that realization sets that they're stuck and that you have a solution for them. They'll take your vehicle. That's a solution for them. You don't need to give them that opportunity. Do not allow anyone to approach you or your vehicle while you're getting home. If someone approaches you, what should you do? I have the text there discussed because in the class we all talked about this. What should you do if someone starts to approach you or your vehicle? You need to be aware that everybody coming at you is going to be a threat. Now, if it's some little old lady or some kid, that's different. But short of that, everybody coming at you is a threat. Tell them to stay away. If it's a real threat, somebody coming at you aggressively, screaming at you, or saying they're going to take your vehicle or something, then you need to draw your weapon and let them know that you have a means of defending yourself. You don't have to shoot them right away, but you certainly have to let them know that you are armed, because that's going to take another large percentage of those people that even attempt that will simply fall back and leave you alone. And then, of course, from that, if it goes beyond that point, you're defending your life. Transportation. As you drive home, you'll have to weave in and out of stalled vehicles. You need to drive at a steady pace. You need to drive slow enough to be able to maneuver around stalled vehicles, but fast enough that no one will be able to climb on. And I've thought about this, and it's going to be tough, because on a freeway, when your car shuts down, your first instinct is to start steering your vehicle into the emergency lane. So chances are that even the emergency lanes are going to be clogged. So you're going to basically have to wing it and do the best you can. You need to keep your windows rolled up and doors locked. You need to be prepared for people to jump in front of the vehicle. You need to be prepared to drive around them if possible, but if not, you need to be prepared to strike them if you want to get to your family. And we discussed this in the class too, and I put the question out there and I said, if this happens to you and you're trying to drive home and somebody jumps in front of your vehicle, what are you going to do? And several of the people said, I'm not even going to slow down. This is my family I'm trying to get to. And most of them are going to realize I'm not stopping. They're going to get out of the way. You need to realize that this is a possible situation. And you cannot lose focus of what your goal is. Be prepared to drive off-road if necessary. This is where it becomes important for you to consider a vehicle that can handle a little bit of off-road at least. Low vehicles that cannot climb a curb, cannot go off into the grass, that will get stuck in mud in no time flat, are not what you want. You want a vehicle that has some ground clearance, a pickup truck or an SUV, old, that will survive an EMP, that will allow you to get off-road or go off-road. I have a section on all of this too in our online material, where I talk about the vehicle and all the benefits that you can get from an old vehicle, a diesel vehicle, and all the features you should look for or you should put into the vehicle to improve the vehicle. And that's basically it for that. Once you make it home, you implement the same mentality at home. You need to think about avenues of approach to your home. You need to realize that people will likely come and knock on your door. You need to be ready to respond to that. You cannot pretend you're not home, because that's going to encourage and invite people to break the door down. So you're going to need to let them know that you are armed and ready to defend yourself. The biggest threat, I think, at that point that you'd be facing, assuming they're not armed, is that they might try to set your home on fire. So you're going to have to be ready to watch for that. And you're going to have something ready to turn off a fire, considering there's no water pressure. What if somebody throws a Molotov cocktail at your house which is a bottle full of gasoline, and lights it and throws it at your house. How are you going to put that out? You need to think about that. Reading. There's a lot of material out there. There's videos, there's websites, there are books, everything, and forums, discussion groups. There's tons of information. If you're serious about this, I seriously recommend that you get involved into all these things: books, videos, websites, everything you can. The more you know, the better off you're going to be. This is a link to the EMP Commission. There's an executive summary, and then there's a full commission report. If you click it, you'll see, and I'll provide links for all this. This is the commission to assess the threat to the United States from electromagnetic pulse attack. This is a government agency organization that was put together to study this. They came forward with an executive report and the actual Criminal National Infrastructures report. It is too much to cover, but the bottom line is what we've discussed in these videos is what's in these reports. They not only acknowledge that this is possible, they strongly recommend the government move on this. There's been two commissions in 2004 and another one in 2008. Very little has been done that was recommended by these commissions. The first one, there was even one before that, and I think it started in '98 or something like that. And there was, I think, the first attempt to get the government to think about this. And unfortunately, that particular report came out on the exact same day that the 9/11 Commission report came out. So the same day that the 9/11 report came out, that very first EMP report came out, and nobody saw it because everybody was focused on the 9/11 report. So years passed again with nobody paying attention to this. And then in 2004, they did another one, and they came out with recommendations and so forth. Then they did this one in 2008 and came out with more recommendations and studied the progress, what little there was. And basically, that's where we are right now. So I recommend you read this. It is sobering material. If you go online, you'll find videos from the people who took part in these commissions. There's a Dr. Pry, who I believe was in the previous commission to this one, who has done quite a few videos. I believe his last name is Pry. I'm not positive, but I'll post it. He has gone on and set up conferences and groups and meetings and so forth, trying to get the word out to people at the state level and local level to try to get them to move, because the federal government isn't moving at all. So he is trying to push for that at a local level. The state of Maine, for example, has a plan, and they've put it in place. I think North Carolina is looking into it. I believe Texas is looking into it. But Maine actually has a plan approved by their Congress and pushed through, and they're implementing it. Because one congresswoman in Maine read one of the books that I'm going to show you a link to here in a minute. She read the book and realized that this was a problem that needed to be addressed immediately. And she single-handedly practically pushed it through the legislature of Maine and put it in place. And now they have a plan in place at the state level in Maine. Yet our federal government, who is really in charge of protecting us constitutionally, are doing nothing about it. So we've got serious issues there. So that's the EMP Commission report. There's this book called Lights Out, which I'm still reading, by Ted Koppel, the news guy. Some of you older people like myself know who Ted Koppel was. He became aware of the EMP threat, and could not believe what he was learning. And so he decided to write this book called Lights Out. It's a good book. It's very well done. It's very, very well written. It's got a lot of good information. I'm not even through it all yet, but I put out a couple of quotes out of that book that caught my attention. The commander, the Central Command commander, General Lloyd Austin, said it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So here's the commanding general of our Central Command, military general, and he's saying it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. The federal government, another quote, the federal government, while well prepared for natural disasters, has no plan for the aftermath of an attack on the power grid. The current Secretary of Homeland Security basically is suggesting you keep a battery-powered radio. So they are treating an EMP attack the same way they're treating a hurricane attack, as if a battery-powered radio would work after an EMP attack. That's how out of touch the federal government is on this whole subject, that they're not even aware of the differences. Another book that I recommend, and I recommend all of these, but another book that I read early on when I first started to prep. In fact, it was one of the first things that, along with what happened in Hurricane Rita, this book, I read it by pure chance. I was traveling and I stopped at a store at the airport and I saw this book and it caught my eye because it was called Emergency and it was red. It catches your eye. And let me click the link so you can see the book. Here it is. See why it catches your eye? It's you pull that lever like you do in an emergency in a fire. Well, that's the cover of the book, and it says this book will save your life, and then you pull it, and it's a fascinating book because aside from where you may stand politically, whether you consider yourself a conservative or liberal or anywhere in between, this person, Neil Strauss, wrote this book. He's a journalist, and before the year 2000, remember when the big year 2000 switch was coming, everybody was afraid that the entire system would come down. He wanted to write a story about the quote-unquote crazy people out there that were preparing for the end of the world. His organization, I don't remember magazine or what it was, that wanted him to go out there and write about it. So he went out and he met with them, and to his surprise, they weren't crazy in the sense of what he, I guess, imagined beforehand. He tells you the whole story in there, and they opened his eyes because they weren't preparing for that alone. They were preparing for anything. They were preppers. That was the first time I ever saw anybody talking about preppers. And he was fascinated by it because when he saw what they were doing and he stopped and thought about where he was, he realized how vulnerable he was. So here you have a guy who doesn't believe in guns, hunting. He himself in the book says, I am not your manly man. I am as far away from that as you can get. And he decided that he wanted to study more about this. So he talked to his company. They approved him following up and reading and writing a book. This book will walk you through his transformation from being somebody who knew nothing to one who is very well prepared. It's a fascinating read to see somebody evolve so drastically. But there's a lot of great information in there, so I do recommend that. There's a couple of series of books that are pretty popular with the prepper community. Going Home is one of them, by A. American, and there's a whole series of these. Down here you can see Going Home, Surviving Home, Escaping Home. Going Home is the first of the series. It's very well written again. Highly recommend it. Lights Out, same name as the one Ted Koppel wrote, but this one is by David Crawford. Another book. This was written actually by somebody on the internet, and it's a good read. All of these books have little things, little bits and pieces that you'll be able to pick up that will help you in your own development and your own preparation. They all follow the basic general EMP attack situation is thus, what do I do? And what the characters do basically to survive. This next one is called Patriots. If you are serious about doing this and you're like me, I like to organize. I like to create lists. I like spreadsheets for that purpose. because it allows me to organize and group things and find things that go together, and therefore organize everything. Because if you get into this for real, there's a lot to do, a lot to gather, a lot to learn, a lot of skills you need to learn, and you need to track and plan and lay it all out. So with that being my way of doing things, when I read Patriots by James Wesley Rawls, I was blown away because, again, it's the same scenario. EMP, something happens, they go out, he has to survive, the main character, and all the characters throughout it, and what happens, etc. What I find different about this book is that Patriots is practically a how-to. And by that, I mean equipment, I mean gear, I mean firearms, I mean everything that you would need, in essence, to go and survive through this. He uses brand names, he uses model names, he uses everything that will uniquely identify a tool he is using in the book, or his character is using in the book. And it's I went through that entire book. It was an ebook for me, so I was able to just simply highlight the sections of it and copy it and create it. A spreadsheet tab on my list, in my spreadsheet, that I could then start going through and deciding what it is that I agreed with I needed, and start creating links and the pricing and all that from there. But that's if you're going to go further than just the basics, you'll definitely want to look at that one. The last one here is 1 Second After by William Forstchen, I believe is how it's pronounced. He is the one I told you about in one of the earlier videos that Newt Gingrich approached about writing this book. There's videos of him online. In fact, I'm going to put up some links to one of the more recent videos I just saw of his, where he talks about how he wrote it and what he did. And now when he talks to people about his book, he says, "Welcome to my nightmare," because he, ever since he wrote the book, he's committed 100% to prepping and preparing for this, because it opened his eyes to how possible this is and how scary it is. So very well written book, because he is a professional writer. Some of these other people above him are not professional writers. They're people who were passionate about the topic and decided that they wanted to write something about it. But William is a professional, and you can tell in the book how well it's written. One difference about his book, and a couple others I think might be like it, but one other might be like it, but this particular book, 1 Second After, deals with him and his community coming together. Their small town, how they can come together and deal with all the problems which he goes through from top to bottom. And it makes you think about what you will do with your community, and what you can do with your community, and what you should do now to start reaching out to people, because you don't want to be an island. Okay, next slide is EMP effects on vehicles. There's a link here. This is a document that breaks down or talks about all the various things you need to think about and consider about EMP. And I've heard some people say, well, no, it's not going to affect vehicles are going to be fine. So don't worry about it. One of the people in the commission, one of the people who actually worked on the government's commission, I just saw a recent video of his, where he, as he's talking about, the effects of it, he mentions, you're going to go out to your parking lot and you're going to get in your car's not going to start. So the commission believes that the vehicles are not going to run. Earlier reports from a commission report, or maybe from another study, has said that vehicles would not be affected. Critics of that study said that the problem was that it was done by a government agency, some government agency, which had to borrow the vehicles they were testing from another government agency and promised not to damage the vehicles. Therefore, they used EMP waves that were, or an EMP that was much lighter than a real one would be. And even then, they noticed that most cars shut off. Many of them came right back on, Some were damaged and would not come back on. But the bottom line is they didn't put through a full-blown EMP blast. One of the videos that I have seen just recently also talks about how simple it is to create an EMP. For $20,000, this scientist in the video created an EMP, put it in the back of a van, and they drove it out to an army base where the army had hired him, because the army had hired him to create this EMP because they wanted to test their Faraday cage, their Faraday containment, and they put in a bunch of stuff in there that would measure if the EMP got through, and then they shot it at it, and he has a picture of it in the video. For $20,000, he built something that blew through that army Faraday cage as if it wasn't even there. And it scared the living daylights out of the army guys, because for $20,000 this guy did that. What's a nuclear warhead going to do? So there's a lot of info out there on videos on YouTube as well. Now be careful, there's a lot of nutcases out there, and there's a lot of misinformation too. You need to do your own homework. If this is the first you've heard of this is all new to you, you need to do your own homework. You need to study, you need to research, you need to figure out for yourself. The fact that the government says it's real, twice now, at least, has come out with studies where they say it's real and it's a very real possibility. Read the summary of the commission report and you'll see that in plain language there, they're telling you this is the biggest threat we face right now. And that it's very easily done, and that we are very, very susceptible to this. This is gonna hurt us big. Another link I have here is the principles of personal defense. I mentioned that self-defense is something you should consider. This is a book that covers a lot of that. Another book, Lift of Bang: How the Marine Corps Hunter Program Can Save Your Life. The Marine Corps lost, as everybody else in the military, lost a lot of men and women in Iraq and Afghanistan and such. And one of the things they realized, because of improvised EIDs, improvised explosive devices, IEDs, sorry. Because of IEDs, they were losing a lot of people, a lot of limbs and such, and they needed to study why and how they could solve this. And this book covers how they actually made that adjustment and cut down on a lot of the injuries that were happening. And it took changing their viewpoint. They needed to stop the IED being put in place first. They needed to change. Don't wait for the IED. If it's in the ground already, it's too late. It's going to blow up and kill somebody or maim somebody. They needed to move forward of it. Left of bang. That's what the title means. If the bang is in the middle, the explosion is in the middle, and you're on the right-hand side on the timeline, you're affected by the explosion. But if you get to the left of the bang, this is before the explosion has occurred, and you have a chance to do something about it. And they did, and it changed, in effect, affected how they were able to survive and stop a lot of these IEDs. So that's a great book as well. The link will take you right to the book on Amazon. So it's a great read. I have a spreadsheet, survival spreadsheet also that I maintain with, as I mentioned, tabs for just about every one of these topics and then some. And as we go forward, I'll probably start making videos on each one of those tabs and showing you what I've gathered. A lot of the hardcore survivalist preppers say that's crazy. Don't tell people what you have, because you're a target now. And that may be true, but people that I need to worry about aren't other survivalists. They're going to be taken care of already. The other survivalists are not going to go around the neighborhoods or the towns looking for things. They're going to be hunkered down defending themselves and their families. The ones I need to worry about and everybody else needs to worry about are the ones that didn't do anything to prepare for this and are going to be looking for anything to survive. Those are the ones I need to worry about. And those people are going to see this and are going to go in my spreadsheet and look. So they're not going to be aware of what I have. So I'm not concerned about that. So I think the value of sharing all this information with everybody is highly outranks the potential threat of sharing that I have information and so forth. Because part of what you might have noticed is I'm armed, so anybody coming that way is not going to do very well. I believe, oh yeah, movies and documentaries. I think I got a couple more slides. Movies and documentaries. There's a lot of great things out there. I don't look at zombie movies and things like that because that's ridiculous. There's not going to be zombies. The Survivalist is one movie that I just saw recently. I haven't watched it, but I've learned about. Again, I can't recommend it, but there it is. American Blackout, excuse me. It's a YouTube video. Here's a page of it, so you can kind of see the title of it. 2013. It's a full movie by National Geographic. You know National Geographic, the magazine and so forth. Well, they made this video. I think it's an hour long, an hour and a half. It's a movie in essence. It's a movie that takes a family, I believe a family or a couple of families, through this process. Very well done. It does make you think a lot. We watched it and had some discussions about it. The Road is another movie. It's after something, nuclear attack, EMP, who knows, occurs. This man and his family and how they dealt with it. I will warn you that movie, The Road, is extremely rough watching. If you are affected by watching families and their parents dealing with loss of children and such, I would not recommend this movie because it's very, very, very rough, very scary. As far as seeing what he has to do to protect his son. But it is about the topic, so I'll leave it out to you to see if you want to watch. Completely on the opposite end of this is Alone in the Wilderness. This is a book as well as a DVD right here. You notice the price on it, $33. The reason is this video was made and it never got picked up for wider distribution or anything of that nature. So there's very few copies of it out there. I think the person who has rights to it now can sell them from his website, but the price is, I believe it's the same. You can buy some used for $24 or $49. But this is an excellent DVD. Very different from anything else because this is a true story of a man who went out into the wilderness of Alaska by himself with just some hand tools, nothing electric. He built his own tools, he built his own gear basically, and went out there and built himself a cabin. And it's amazing. If you've ever felt the calling of living out on your own in your own cabin or something of that nature, watch this. It'll blow you away how cool this guy was to do this on his own by himself. The danger of that, if he were to get injured, is incredible. So it's not something you would recommend ever to do by yourself. But this guy, you'll see him working throughout the video and doing a bunch of other stuff too. It's fascinating to watch. There was a second book that came out in addition to this one, a follow-up that you can also find online. But I also highly recommend it, particularly if you're interested in living out off-grid. After Armageddon, another, I believe it's a documentary. This might be this program. It might be a movie. I don't really recall if it's a movie or documentary, but they're basically following the same storyline. But all of them I would recommend you watch. They're all entertaining in the sense that they keep your attention. Britain Blackout is another one. Very well done. And this one, if I'm not mistaken, was made, oh no, maybe it's Threads. Threads was made in 1984, believe it or not, 84. And I think that one has to do with nuclear attack, after a nuclear attack. But it's very, very well done for that time period. and pretty rough as well. Pretty rough watching. The National Geographic, and in addition to American Blackout, also did Electronic Armageddon, also available on YouTube. So it's another one you should watch. Also very well done. And finally, Miscellaneous. If you are going to get a license to carry, I highly recommend you get a membership to the U.S. Concealed Carry Association, because they will provide you with legal help. Because no matter what the situation is, if you have to be in a position to defend yourself with a firearm, chances are you're going to end up in legal trouble. Even if you're in the right, you might still get sued, and they will provide paid legal help for the membership fee. You can click on their website and on the link and follow the link, and they'll give you all kinds of information. Active self-protection videos on YouTube. This is a channel on YouTube. Now I will warn you, this is a channel that has videos mostly from security cameras from around the world, mostly having to do with firearms and people who have had to use firearms. And you think, wait a minute, why do I want to watch people getting shot or killed? The purpose of these videos isn't for you to see that. The purpose of the videos is for you to see everything prior to that point. Everything left of bang. Everything that happens before you pull the trigger. There are so many things in these videos that teach you how. You'll see the video and he'll tell you now load it. Notice how the guy is looking over here. He's not paying attention. Notice how he went this way. Notice it's a study of how to carry yourself and protect yourself in public if you're armed and if you're being attacked. And highly recommend it, but I warn you, those are videos of people, in most cases criminals, being shot. So if you don't like to watch that sort of thing, avoid those. But if you don't have a problem with that, I highly recommend that channel because you will learn a ton. Excuse me. Survivalistboards.com is the main discussion board that I frequent. It has anything and everything to do with survivalism. There's just a lifetime worth of information in here. There's memberships that you can join. If you join and pay the small yearly fee, you have access to private forums. You also have access to a lot of material that you can download, that you can only download from being a member. There's also items for sale, questions, reviews, all kinds of firearm discussions, self-defense, you name it, it's in here. These are all the users. These are all the people that are currently on this website just as of right now. And that's not even everybody. So it's amazing. Half a million different discussions almost. 8.5 million posts. So you'll never run out of material to read and learn from in here. Survivalistboards.com, highly recommend it. Texas Preparedness Group is another website I frequent, but not as much, I must say. Survivalist Boards seems to have everything I need, but this does give you more of a, if you're in Texas like I am, this gives you more of a local flavor to it. So it's another resource. Survival Blog is another website that I do follow. They have a lot of information in here as well. This is another one, much like Survivalist. This one here has just tons of materials. Going back to 2005. So, you see here's the fish meds. Remember I told you in one of the previous videos about antibiotics, how you can buy them? Here you are. Amoxicillin, ampicillin, you can buy them. It's the exact same thing as what you buy over the counter. I mean, through a prescription, excuse me. Most people are just simply not aware of that. 1881 is land-based information, Land Watch also. These have to do with purchasing land for bug out locations. If you're interested in setting up a bug out location, it'll walk you through the process. Lift to Bang is the same, is this a journal for that book I mentioned, the Marine Corps book. This is a journal that follows that. ITS Tactical is a website where you can get tactical equipment and gear. Highly recommended as well. They have DVDs. One of them in particular I will recommend. I believe these are all the gear videos. There's some products in here. Maybe it's under shop. There's some DVDs in here. I don't see it. I'll have to double check and see where it is. I want to say that it's on this website, but there's a website that I highly recommend, and they have some DVDs in there that one of them in particular covers how. Oh, this is it right here. My mistake. Survivalsummit.com, thesurvivalsummit.com. I haven't seen some of these others. I'm not interested in learning duck hunting 101 yet. Survival HD. I'm not so much into this. I read this description of it, but I'm going to pass on that. This is the one I wanted to mention. This is one where I actually learned quite a bit about doing things. It covers all sorts of techniques. Most of this is probably available on YouTube. You could find it. But this presents it all in one place. It tells you how to open locks, pick a lock in essence, and deal with a lot of other things. But there's a lot of stuff in here. It's too much to cover right now, but highly recommend it. And that is the end of my resources here. As I mentioned, I have a Google Drive where I have just tons of information and documents and videos, and my spreadsheet is the center of it all. I will over time start going through that spreadsheet. I was planning to do that in our advanced meetup, but literally that spreadsheet, there's material in there for 10 meetups, if not more. So I will start looking at that and talking with everybody at the meetup and see what you want to discuss. I'll probably put some polls up, offer 2 or 3 topics or 3 or 4 topics to let you vote which one you are most interested in, and we can go from there. All right, if you watched all these videos, I hope you learned something, and hope you're take this seriously, because it is absolutely real. So please prepare. And if you have questions, I have turned off comments on these videos because I know what comments are like on videos on YouTube, and it becomes either a just a nasty fight going back and forth, or people just saying rude things, and that's not the purpose of the video. The video is to get the video out and get people to watch it and learn, hopefully. If you have comments for me, you can certainly send them to me. I will actually put it up here for a second. That's my email address, devildogemp@gmail.com. So if you have questions, or you want more information, or you have suggestions or anything of that nature, send me an email and I'll certainly reply. Otherwise, if you want to join the Houston EMP meetup, again, this is the meetup. If you're not familiar with what a meetup is, it's a organization that allows you to meet together face to face and cover topics of interest on that Houston, or on the Houston meetup. You'll find everything from art to movies to books, clubs, everything you can imagine. There's, I believe, was one other survivalism meetup there. I think it folded. So if you search for Houston EMP Preppers meetup, you should find our meetup. You can certainly join there if you'd like. If you're local to the Houston area, might be able to join us for our next meetup. If not, certainly we can do this online, and I can just continue to post videos online because it has obviously a much wider reach. With that, I'll let you go and see you at the next video.